It's going to be like 4 or 5 episodes on this topic, and today's opening session is going to be on how to design an experiment properly. And we're going to talk about a lot of different things about what we should be careful about when we are designing a research experiment. But at the same time, what we are going to also do is to look at how probably one can learn how to do good real experiment design while one also does literature survey or literature review or reading other people's, especially good papers, right? So we'll also look into that aspect a little bit as well. So hello everyone, just say hi and hello. And I know that I was just wondering, that is it at the right time, because it's all holiday season right now, and a lot of people may not be able to attend the session, and may not be able to participate in the discussions. But then I felt that, okay, well, one reason is that we already announced the thing, and the other reason was that, well, there are a lot of people, what we have seen is that a lot of people watch the video afterwards, so we always have this recording on YouTube, and you can always go to our YouTube channel and watch it at your when you are free. So we thought that, let's not break the rhythm, and let's do this thing. But yes, so here comes my tea, I guess. So just say hi and hello to everyone. Hello, everybody, whoever is present, and what you are doing, what's your research area, what's your affiliation, where are you from, which country, which university. Just keep typing on the chat box. If you are on Crowdcast, you can use the chat box on Crowdcast. If you are on YouTube, you can use the chat box on YouTube, and just say hi and hello to each other. Although I wouldn't expect a lot of people to tonight, because it's kind of holiday season. But whoever we find, just say hi and hello to each other. I can see Javeria Malik. Hi, Javeria. I can see Govardhan. Hi, Govardhan. Just say, well, I would love to know about your research interests and where are you from. Let me see how many people are there on YouTube. Just say hi and hello to each other. So, hi, Javeria. You're from Pakistan. Wow, fantastic. So, so you're like one hour ahead, I guess, right? I think so. And where are you from? Where are you in Pakistan? By the way, my best friend is from Lahore. Where are you in Pakistan? Karachi. Okay, I see. So, what do you do? Which university? And what's your research interest? Okay, and what's your research interest? I would also love to know a little bit about C. Govardhan. If you are live, then please let us know what you are doing. Oh, great. You're from Anna University. Okay, what's your research interest? This is so good. And by the way, you guys, if you really like what I am trying to do over here, then please do bring your friends. also let them know about what we are trying to do over here. The kind of community that we want to build, right? You're just a newbie. Okay, good, good. That's great then. Uh, okay, you're in civil engineering. Any specific research topic that you're working on, Govardhan? What's your interest, by the way, Javeria? What's your general interest? Let me see if we have some friends on YouTube as well. So people who are on YouTube, also just put your stuffs on the YouTube channel. Just say hi and hello. What's your name and what research area you're working on? Which university? Would love to know you. We still have some time. Like we are like 4 minutes before time, so would like to understand a little bit about what you are doing. And if you have specific questions about me or the programs, the sessions that we are running, or if you want me to talk about some topic, some specific topic that you want me to cover, just put it on the chat, right? That would be really nice. Okay, concrete with industrial waste. Good, very good, very nice. Which year are you doing your PhD over there? And by the way, thanks all of you who are spending some time with me now. When there is all this festive mood, like a holiday mood going on all around the world, and you are spending some time with me. So I'm very, very thankful to all of you. Okay, you are in your PhD first year. Okay, great. Okay, this is nice answer from Javeria. These days, I would like to search about COVID. Good, good. Good. So how are you doing it, Javeria? Like where are you? What kind of platforms you're using, or are you just Googling around and what are you doing? And are you a master student or a PhD student? What are you, what or undergrad? What are you doing currently? Hi Vidya, I expected. I was just wondering, where is Vidya? Why am I not seeing him? Vidya is perhaps the only person who has never missed a single session. Is it true, Vidya? Am I correct, or have you ever missed anything? Vidya, I have a complaint for you. You are not bringing your students and your friends. Okay, just started watching random YouTube. Okay, YouTube is a good place if you watch. Especially there are some really good educative content on COVID. And if you want to understand more about interesting stuff at a very surface level, interesting visualizations about COVID, then I can give you some materials. Do join our Discord. By the way, let me give you the Discord share so that what we are doing, Javeria, is that we are sort of we are sort of building a community on Discord. I've given the link over there, and you can just uh, join there, and I can give you a lot of interesting materials. At a bird eye level, nice visualizations in terms of what everybody is doing around COVID, right? I have some good collections. Okay, great. So let us start, I guess. Okay, so let me just share my screen. And guys, just let me know if my screen is visible. I hope my screen is visible, right? Okay, great. All right. So as I said, this is going to be the first episode of this series that I'm going to do, which is getting to the results. You know, and the first episode is going to cover the different aspects of how to design your experiments. Because that's the first step, sort of. That's the first step to get to the results, right? And just to give you a context, like we are building this product called Rax, and it's a next generation literature analysis and comprehension tools, which means it helps you to dissect research paper. As you would be reading a lot of research paper in your research, it helps you to dissect and analyze and compare and contrast research papers very, very quickly, and helps you to organize all your thoughts and your own ideas in a very nice manner. So you can just explore it when you have the time, right? So this is the problem, really. This is actually what it boils down to. Research career is equal to results. So if you are into a career which is research, then it's all about results. If you don't have the right results or the good results or the results or any results for that matter, then it's going to be problematic, right? So just like, and by the way, people who know me, they know that I so much love PhD comics. So like the student over here, he is asking the professor, like, do you have he comes to the professor and the professor says, do you have significant results on your project yet? And the student is like, well, not yet, I'm still working on it. And then the professor is, how about now? After, when he comes back later, and the professor says, how about now? And then the student is like, still nothing. So I hope that nobody gets into this situation, right? So that's the idea, that we should never ever get into this situation, right? So now, before I start dwelling on research design, or experiment design rather, I want to make something very clear. And there is quite a good amount of confusion that I've seen while working with students from multiple different disciplines, that there's a confusion between the experiment method and versus the research method. So what is a research method versus what is an experiment method, right? And let me first clarify this thing. So there are two purposes of doing experiments. When you are doing an experiment, when you're conducting an experiment, there are two different purposes. One purpose is that you have an approach and you are trying to evaluate the approach, which means how good your approach is. Now you have to evaluate that approach and show to the rest of the world that, look at the approach that I took is really fantastic and really works. And how can I show that? By evaluating the approach. And how do I evaluate the approach? By conducting certain experiments to show that the approach is really lovely, right? So whenever I conduct the experiment, I will be definitely finding some results, and I will be using those results to show to the rest of the world, or to my readers, or to the research community in which I belong, that, well, my approach is really great, right? Or it is the best approach, or whatever that would be, the claim would be. The other purpose of doing experiments or conducting experiments is actually to establish the claim itself. So if you have a claim, if you are making a claim and you need to establish that claim, then there is the only way to establish the claim is to conduct certain experiments, right? So essentially what you're doing is, when you run that experiment in the second case, for the second purpose, you are also at the same time, this is common, that you will be coming to some findings or results, but now what you're doing is you're using these results to establish the claim, rather than to show how good your approach is, but to establish the claim that you are trying to make, right? So there are two different purposes of doing experiments, and today's discussion would be primarily we would focus on the highlighted, the yellow highlighted, which is purpose number 1. So that is what we are going to focus on. And the entire series that I'm going to concentrate would focus on purpose number 1, right? The entire series that I'm going to do. I will have a different series on on purpose number 2, but that would be a part of research method. So I will be doing another series on research method, and purpose number 2 will be part of it, right? So the purpose of this entire series is to focus how to make sure that the world recognizes my approach. Okay, so that is the idea. Now, if you look at approach, you will see that what is an approach? It's actually an application of some specific research methods, right? And what is a research method? A research method is a set of steps that you take towards establishing the claim. So what we are trying to do in purpose number 1 is we are trying to show that, okay, there is an approach which is actually a research method. I took a research method in order to establish a claim, and now I'm trying to show that my method is really good, right? So that is the idea. Okay, so it's for evaluation of the research method itself. Okay, so, and the purpose 2 is actually a part of approach. As you can see, purpose number 2 is actually part of approach. And that kind of experiment is like, it's one of the, there are 8 tribes of research method, 8 different kinds of research method. And that sort of experiment, the purpose 2 kind of experiment, is one of those 8 kinds, one of those 8 tribes. Okay, so it's not the only way of doing research method. It's not the only way of doing research. It's just one way, right? So that's purpose number 2. So I want you to pause over here and make sure that you do understand the difference between experiment as purpose number 1 and experiment as purpose number 2, right? And then when you talk about claim, what is claim? Claim is an original contribution. What you are claiming as your own original contribution. So that would be claim, right? So let me see. I'm pausing here just because if you are not clear about purpose number 1 and purpose number 2, all the rest of the discussion for tonight is going to go in vain, right? So let me see if there are some questions only on this slide first. Okay. I'm going to pause for 1-2 minutes to see if there are some questions or not. Okay, any questions on so far? Okay, so Sundar, that's a question. That's not a question I was expecting, but let me just, this is something that probably Keith can answer. Okay. Any questions so far regarding the two categories of experiments? You actually run experiments for 2 different purposes. One is to establish, purpose number 1 is to show that your method was a good method. And purpose number 2 is to actually a part of the method itself. That's part of the method. Okay, I'll assume that. So questions, there's no questions so far. But if you have questions, just don't wait for it. Just keep putting it. Okay. So now, here's the other thing. So what does this mean? So if you look at it very, the general thing is this, that, okay, I think I need to go back to Crowdcast. I hope my screen is visible. I'm still on Crowdcast, I guess, right? Just say yes if I'm still on Crowdcast, if you can still have seen me on Crowdcast. Okay, good. So now let's look into this. So this is the general theme. So you start with a research question, right? So that's the research question. And what do? You use a research method to investigate the research question, and then while you investigate the research question, the outcome of that investigation will be a research claim. You actually, in the sense that you do the investigation to claim something, because at the end of the day, this is the original contribution. You want to claim something about this research question, which means you address the research question and you claim something. And to address the research question, the method that you take is the research method, right? So this is the general scheme. But for doing that, what do? So the research method will lead you to research findings or results. The results, then what do you do with the results? You analyze the results, and then you try to come to certain conclusions about those results. And then after you analyze the results, you use that analysis to establish your research claim, this research claim. You try to give support to your research claim, right? But where does evaluation come in, which is today's topic primarily? Like, what do you mean by evaluating, and why do I even need to evaluate my research method? So what happens is, when you are evaluating the research method, you are trying to make sure that your method does not have any bias, which means you're trying to detect whether there is any bias or not, or rather, in a different way, you're trying to show people, when you will be writing the paper, ultimately, you will try to prove your point, and you'll try to show that the result, your method is not biased, right? The second purpose of evaluating your research method is to provide the justification. Like, it has been done rigorously, it has been done properly, it has been done with the right kind of setup, right? And it actually does the job, which means that whatever it is claiming to do, which means this claim, it actually leads to this claim, in the sense that research method, if you apply this research method, then it will definitely reach you to the claim, right? So that's the justification that you have to give. And that is why evaluation is necessary. Now, one kind of evaluation process is through experiments, right? So you run some experiments to show that your research method is good, is strong, is proper, and is without any bias, and you can provide the right kind of justifications. Then only people will accept this layer, that yeah, essentially this entire process from research method till research claim is justified. Okay, otherwise the research community will be skeptical about whether this actually will really lead to this or not, right? So what are the types of research question? Let us first try to understand, and the corresponding claims, right? So a claim, as I said, is a statement or a set of statements you make to address the specific research question that you have at hand. Okay, you are investigating. And by address, what do I mean? There are 6 types of addressing. One is that either you solve a problem, which means your research question is a problem and your address is solving. Okay, or your research question is a phenomena, and that can be a natural phenomena, biological phenomena, a social phenomena. Okay, and you're reporting that phenomena. So your addressing is essentially reporting. The third category is your research question is a phenomena and you're explaining the phenomena. Okay, sorry. The fourth is that your research question is either a problem or a hypothesis or a conjecture, and you're trying to prove it. And it happens a lot in mathematical sciences, right? The fifth category is where your research question is essentially to dig deep into a particular entity and to show certain important properties of that particular entity. And that entity can be also a phenomena or any kind of mathematical constructs or anything like that, right? Or even a social phenomena or social event. And you are trying to dig deep and to bring out certain properties, certain important properties via analysis, right? And you're reporting that analysis, reporting those properties, which nobody knew about those properties, right? So that's the fifth category. And the sixth category is that, there is an event, your research question is an event or a character or ethics or morality or ideology, and you're trying to give a perspective, your own perspective to it. Essentially, so this is the addressing part. So these are the six different types of research question and how you would be claiming, so you would be claiming certain unique thing, so either it will be a unique solution or a unique reporting or a unique explaining or a unique proving or a unique reporting of the analysis, reporting of the properties or a unique perspective, right? So that's where your original contribution would be, right? So now I talked about those 8 tribes of research methods, right? And what are those 8 tribes of research methods? And that's where I was telling you this experiment is what purpose number 2, which I'm just giving you an outline so that you have the right context. This experiment is the experiment which is for purpose number 2, which is experiment for which is actually a part of the research method. Okay, so the very first type, the tribe number 1 is just survey. So your research method is to conduct surveys, and we all know what surveys are. Those are short question answer sort of a thing, and it can be multiple choice, and there are multiple different. This itself can be a topic to discuss, like should be a good way to do surveys. Okay, so and this is pretty much what we study when we try to do qualitative analysis or qualitative research. And then you have interviews. That can be a little bit of group interview, or it can also be it can also be one-on-one interviews, right? And there's something, the surveys, longer surveys are questionnaires, so there can be questionnaires as well that you can give out to specific group. Surveys are in general, the difference between surveys and questionnaires is more like length, deeper details, and surveys are more generic. You can spread out to a lot of different people for that particular sample which you want to study. Questionnaires are more specific to a specific subgroup, so to say, and which can be more detailed, right? So focus group studies also, you have you create a group and you are part of the group, and you try to understand through behavioral studies or through interviews or through group activities, and you try to understand certain things which relates to your research question, right? Case studies would be like very, 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 very specific group, very small specific group with a very niche, narrow, specific research question, and you dig deep and deep and deep and deep and deep and deep, essentially. So you have multiple regular interaction with that group, and you take it like a case, essentially. So this is a very specific small case, and you are only interested in that small specific case, right? And you are only interested in investigating that case, right? So that is what is case studies. Participants, non-participant observations means, it usually happens a lot in social sciences, where you would be doing field studies or ethnographic studies, and you are part of the of that community, and you just observe. Your primary job is just to observe and see what's going on. So you don't give any activity or questionnaire or survey or anything, but you're just observing the group and making your notes, your field notes. Non-participant means that you are not part of that thing, but you are doing it passively, which means through certain monitoring or sensors or through reports that have been done by some other people, and you're studying it, and you're basically you are out of the community. You don't, and sometimes you have to do that practically not to influence the community's behavior, because your influence may sometimes create bias into those observations, right? Observational trials happens a lot in health sciences, and where you look into specific groups, and you give a certain kind of treatment, or and so on and so forth. And one variation can be clinical trials also, and you try to figure out what is happening if you give one kind of treatment to one group and another kind of treatment to another group, and so on and so forth. And you keep doing that over a period of time also, so you can do that over a period of time. So that's observational trials. Delphi method is like those sort of things, which usually is for those kind of research questions which are more prediction oriented or forecasting kind of stuffs, where what you do is that you have an expert panel. So over here the group is actually experts, domain experts, and they give their own opinion through whatever method they would apply, and then you try to kind of collate all the opinions together to figure out, to do a certain kind of prediction, right? So everybody's opinion, but you have to do it in a particular method so that one doesn't influence the other, and many times it is anonymous. So many times the people who are experts, so to say, they are kept anonymous, and there is a particular method, so what I'm trying to say is that every single topic can itself be every single research method can itself be a topic. And experiments is one kind of research method. So don't you ever think that, it's incorrect to think that experiments is the only way to do research. So there are other kind of, and in some sense, I also consider these to be experiments, if you look at it from a different angle. So it's not always the traditional sense of doing experiments in what we call as lab experiments. So it's not always that would not always be the case. So this is what is never going to happen, that you just have a hypothesis or the claim that you have, and you just do something and you feel like, okay, magically the data is going to come and magically it's going to support your hypothesis, right? So it's not going to happen, right? So this is something that so then what do we need to do? So the very first thing that we need to do is we need to have a very good experiment design. And I want to tell you something, that so far we were discussing experiment methods, right? So we started out with what is an experiment method versus what is a research method. What is the difference? So an experiment method in terms of purpose one versus what is a research method, and how the other kind of experiment is part of this. Then what did we do? We moved on to the overall picture. Then we talked about what are all the different types of research questions and the claims. And then we showed based on the claims you will be adopting, based on the research question, you will be taking or applying a particular kind of research method or multiple types of research method. And these are the different types of research methods. So we explained the research methods. Now I'm going to show you that when you are doing experimental design, first you need to understand what is the difference between an experiment design and an experiment method. Okay, so a design is actually the blueprint in terms of why am I even doing the experiment. So it gives you a blueprint of the why part, right? Whereas a method is actually the specific steps that you take towards evaluation. And by the way, I am talking about evaluation right now, which is purpose number one. So the category one of experiments, okay? So what do? In the blueprint, you have these four things. You set up the experiment goal. Then after that, you set up the experiment environment, and then you choose the parameters to be observed, and then you choose the right measures, right? And So this is very simple. This is the 4 different things that you need to have as your blueprint. And I'm telling you, this is also something that when you write your paper and when you are actually writing about your experiments, these are the 4 sections, so to say, when you're actually writing about the experiments that you did, which you are doing, why you are doing that, so that you can evaluate your method, your research method. Okay, so that's the purpose. And there are 3 goals of evaluation via experiments. Okay, the first goal is that is your approach showing expected behavior empirically. Okay, so the approach or the research method that you took, is it really leading giving the right kind of expected behavior, right? And you have to use certain empirical way to test your approach. And then you have to think and discuss whether you can actually explain the results or the findings that you see after the experiments are done, and whether that really supports your approach or not, right? So they have to support your approach, because if they are going against your approach, which means you are getting results and those results clearly tell that your approach is not the right approach or a suboptimal approach, then you have to rethink about your approach clearly, right? So that is the idea. So it's an iteration process, right? And then you fine tune your approach, or you change your approach, or you maybe there is a bug in your approach, in the sense of maybe there was an error, a human error, a manual error in your approach, and you need to fix that. So there can be many different reasons, why your approach is not working. So just don't immediately jump that you have to change your approach. You first need to figure out whether there is a manual mistake or not, or whether a minor tweak can get the job done, right? So these are the things that you should first look into, and then you should make that big decision that, okay, I need to change the approach in a big way, right? So that's the first goal. The second goal is that, can you find any new insights by analyzing the results? So when you get those results, let's say that you got the results, you did the experiment, you got the result, and now you're looking into the result and you're like, wait a minute, let me see if I get something new out of it, which you may not have even, and this happens a lot, that when we actually start the the experiment, we find that new patterns are coming out, which we did not expect. So we need to, this is an amazing opportunity actually, because you can then hypothesize sort of like whether results produced might lead to some new claims, which means you can go back to your claim and you can add or modify the claim and say that, okay, this is what I am going to claim now because of the results. So many times the result is going to influence your original claim many times. And you have to look at it that way. You cannot, it should not be proper science or proper research in general, should not be the other way around. It should not be that, okay, I am so fixated with my claim, I am so obsessed with my claim that I need a result somehow. I don't know. I somehow need a result which will help me to support my claim. And that's where comes a lot of biasness. And a lot of times, most likely, if you want to submit your work in very good places, most likely it's going to be rejected, because it won't be, this won't be clear. That process that I showed you, like the justification, you can't give a proper justification. So, and it will be very, your reviewer is going to understand it very easily, because in very good places, your reviewers are also very experienced and very good, right? So another interesting thing that you can do when you are analyzing the results, and if you get something new out of it, you may not want to include it in your current paper or the paper that you want to submit, but it may be a future work. It may be a source of future work, which means that you can start thinking that is there some new kind of some can it lead to some new sort of insight. By the way, I kind of did a typo over here. The first one is the claim, and the second one is not claim. Read it as insights. So is it leading to some new insights, and whether those new insights can lead you to the next level of research? So research is always like that. As you, it's like a room of doors. So as you enter into one room, and you will see multiple doors, and you open, you walk through one of those doors and you enter into another room. So it's always like that, right? So this is a very good opportunity for you to figure out, so don't just hurry into the results. Try to understand the result very, very deeply. Kind of almost meditate on the results, and you might get interesting new patterns out of it, which you were not even expecting, right? And then goal 3 is to understand whether your claim is being supported by the results. So which means that whatever results you are getting, whether the ultimate claim that you made, whether that is getting supported. Have you adequately established the claim, and what is missing if that is so, right? So this what is missing is a huge opportunity for you to again go back to your approach, your research method, and then to figure out what you can do about the research method to make sure that you get those results which you need, which is missing to establish the claim. So that can be the third goal. So there are like 3 different goals when you are actually conducting experiments for evaluating your research method, right? So over here again, I'm going to take a pause, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to see whether there are some questions or not. Any questions so far? I'll wait for 2 minutes to see if there are some questions. Let me go to Crowdcast to see. Guys, just keep pouring your questions, don't wait till the end. If you have questions so far, any questions regarding or if you have comments, not just questions about, like how do you do research in terms of experiments, let's say. How do you design your experiments? I would love to know that as well. Okay, so I guess there isn't any such question. Let me just let me see. Okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, from here onwards, what I'm going to do is let's see. Let's now look into setting the environment. Okay, so we looked into the goals of the evaluation, like because this is the first topic, setting up the experiment goals. So you need to be very clear about what is your goal, right? What is exactly your goal, right? And it may be all 3. It may be just the first one. It may be just the first and the second one. But you have to be very clear what exactly is your goal when it comes to evaluation via experiments, right? So after that, it's all about setting the environment, and before, and what it means, design is not doing the experiment, which I'm going to discuss in the on next Wednesday in episode 2, how to conduct experiments. But design is more about setting everything. It's more about, okay, this is exactly how I will do the experiment. So planning. So design is more about planning, right? So today's topic is all about planning. So setting up the experiment environment is actually avoiding biases. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to expose you to all the different biases that can happen when you are about to do an experiment, so that if you already know what are the biases that happen, not just to you, but it can happen to anybody, you are aware how to design that experiment so that you don't bring those biases, and so that your experiment is very, very rigorous. And once your experiment is very rigorous, people cannot question that. So you have a very solid research output, research outcome, and people will not be able to question it, right? So that's the idea. So there are multiple different types of biases that may creep in, when you are designing, and you have to be careful about that. The very first level of bias is the data set, which means the data, the sample that you are using, to conduct your experiment, right? So, and what there are two types of biases that can happen over here. The first kind of bias is what we call as population choice bias. So what does that mean? It means, and this kind of bias can actually creep in the very beginning when you are trying to choose the data set that you want to use, or the sample that you want to study, or the population that you want to study, right? And if you're not choosing the right kind of data set and the right kind of population, then there can be a problem. And I can tell you what I mean by incorrect choice. An incorrect choice would be, as an example, that let's say that you are trying to figure out whether I'm giving you very toy examples, because if I give you very specific to my domain, then probably it would be difficult for a lot of people to understand. So I'll just give you some lame toy examples for you to understand what I mean by population choice bias. So let's say that you want to figure out whether a particular kind of apple can grow in your region, in your own province, or in your own district, or in your own region, or city, or town, or village, right? And what you do is you want to figure out whether that is possible by looking into maybe other kind of by studying a set of apples, right? And you try to grow the apple, and that is the plan. You are planning right now, you're not doing it. So you plan to grow the apple and you buy some apples, and you try to figure out whether these apples will actually grow in or not. Now, let's say that what you did was, and this is a very, very lame example, you, instead of buying an apple, you accidentally bought a carton of seeds for pear, not apple, but pear, or maybe a particular variety of apple that by no way can actually fit into your soil or your weather condition, and is clear, very clear, right? Or the other way around, that you actually chose a set of apple which actually suits your purpose, in the sense that let's say that you are claiming that any kind of apple will work in your area, and then you chose a particular kind of apple breed which suits your soil and your weather condition, but and you chose it intentionally in a way such that it gives positive confirmation. It's like a confirmation bias, right? So that's the first stage where bias can happen, right? That you were not true to the research question at hand. So what was the research question? That has to be understood properly. If the claim rather of the research question was that any kind of apple can grow in my hometown, then you cannot choose a specific kind of a specific breed of apple and then try to run the experiment. You have to choose all kinds of apples, right? So that's the idea. So So this is what, or the other way around. If you are claiming that no, apples cannot grow in my area, then you have to be you have to do the same thing. You cannot just choose a one specific kind of apple and then show that okay, apples cannot grow, or you cannot bring pears and then show that apples cannot grow. That is even worse, right? So then the other kind of bias can be selection bias, and this happens when what happens in experiments is that you have to, in experiments you have to like take the sample and then you have to chop up the sample in terms of subgroups or study groups, and you have to independently run the experiment on different study groups in an independent manner, so that, and you can then that's the way, so that you can actually generalize it into the population. So whatever you see, observe and conclude for the sample, the idea is you want to infer that for the population, right? So what we do is that, in statistics and machine learning, we do cross polls. In other fields, we do study groups, we do sample data sets, and selection bias can also happen over there, because the way you are trying to create the cross polls or create the study groups or create the sample data sets are itself biased, because in the sense that you're not doing it randomly, let's say, and or the randomness itself has bias, and you're trying to sort of bring certain kind of stuffs in a particular study group, or certain kind of people in a particular study group, or certain kind of data points in a particular cross-fold, which actually will help you to prove your point, right? So every cross-fold has is made up. The makeup of every cross-fold or every sample data set is such that it will prove your point, right? So those are selection bias, and you have to make sure that. And by the way, it's not that you are intentionally going to do it. Many times, most of the times, you are not intentionally going to do it. So. And then, but it creeps in. You don't even know, but it creeps in. So you have to be very careful when you are choosing your data set or sample set, and when you are trying to do the cross folds, you have to be very careful about this, right? And I will be, by the way, giving, you join Discord, and I will be giving a lot of materials I've decided, which specifically talks about each one of these biases in details, so that you know when these biases can creep in, exactly what happens, and how to mitigate them, right? So the second kind of set of biases can happen when you are at the methods section, right? And in the method section, what can happen is there's one kind of bias called ascertainment bias. And what happens is that when you are actually using the cross polls, you might want to process it in a particular way. It can be a cleanup process, a pre-processing kind of thing, or it can be certain kind of additional data that you want to put in, or additional kind of parameters that you want to add, which would and the parameter demands some additional information. So you're augmenting your data set or your study group or your cross-fold with certain more information, and then you are trying to do the experiment, right, as you are doing the experiment. So when you are processing this data set at every stage of your experiment, there can be certain kind of bias that may confirm intentionally or unintentionally to your original claim. And you have to make sure that that doesn't happen, because you have to make sure that you're not bringing in noise during the process thing. You have to make sure that your cleanup is not done in a way such that it gets skewed, or it gets aligned with your ultimate goal. It's almost like, since I want to establish this claim, so that's why I'm doing certain processing which will help me to establish this claim. That should not happen, right? So you need to make sure that any kind of pre-processing, or in the experiment process itself, any kind of processing that happens with the data set is not biased with the ultimate goal. Okay, so that's what we have to make sure, that there is no ascertainment bias. The second kind of bias, which is related, is intervention bias, and that happens in clinical trials and all, where you might want to, but in other kind of cases also, not just clinical trials, where you might want to intervene manually while the experiment is going on at different stages. You might want to intervene and do some tweaking, some parameter tweaking, some hyperparameter tweaking, or add some treatment or whatever that is, or put some drugs or medicine or whatever that is. So at different stages, you are also manually, you're not making that process go automatically, but you are stopping the experiment, you are adding some more things, and you are letting it go to the next stage. So when you are doing those interventions, you have to make sure that it doesn't have confirmatory bias in the sense of the ultimate goal. It doesn't get influenced. Those whatever intervention you're doing is not getting influenced by the ultimate goal, right? So either intentionally or unintentionally. So that's the intervention bias. So, and these two kind of bias can come when you are doing the experiment method, when you're running the method, right? And then there are three other kinds. Observation method, which means when you found the result, let's say, and this is something which is very important. You have to understand this. This is probably the biggest issues that I see in my personal experience, which I have seen, which is when you are at the stage of observing your result, there can be three types of biases that can come in. One is the choice of question, which means that the question you are asking when you're observing the data, the results, the findings, which means the parameters that you're trying to observe, those parameters themselves are biased, in the sense that you're choosing intentionally or unintentionally, you're choosing parameters which doesn't make sense in terms of establishing the reality. So those are the wrong parameters. When you're choosing the parameters which either will not help you to support your claim, because so many times the biases, if the biases creep in, it's not just about the bias will support the claim. Many times if the bias creeps in, it may negate the claim incorrectly. And you may think that, well, my research method was all wrong, but actually that's not so. Your experiment of the evaluation experiment was biased, right? So the choice of question bias is that you are looking at it in the wrong way. Let's put it this way: you're looking at the findings by wearing the wrong lens. You need to wear the right lens to understand what really is happening, right? And this kind of related bias is wrong measure bias. And what it does is that the measures that you are using, which means that the way that you would, and this happens in quantitative research, that the measures, or the mathematical measures that, or statistical measures that you are using to evaluate the approach, right? And when you are observing the parameters, you will be using certain measures, certain metrics to evaluate the approach, and those measures themselves are problematic. They actually don't give you the right picture, which means your lenses, it's not just you have worn the wrong lens, but the lens itself is defective. So let's look at it this way. So the choice of question bias is like you put the wrong lens, but the wrong measure bias is like the lens itself is cracked, is defective. It's not coming. It's problematic. You think that you have worn the right lens, but the lens itself is defective. It doesn't actually tell you what you think it tells you, right? So and that happens a lot as well. And the third kind of bias is going to be the ablation bias. And what is ablation bias? A lot of times what happens when we are trying to do experiments for evaluation purposes, we'll fix one specific parameter and we try to figure out what is the effect of this parameter only to the ultimate result. If I just fix this parameter, then what happens? If I only use this parameter, then what happens, right? And you are trying to understand the effect of specific parameters But then when you do that, a lot of times you may be choosing those ablation parameters which are not the right parameters to choose for an ablation study, which means that it either doesn't make sense to do that ablation study, or it will always give a point towards something which you would feel like that's truth, but that's not really truth. So you have to be very, very careful about your ablation studies, what kind of parameters you are choosing, whether that really makes sense or not, and whether that aligns, whether that is consistent with the ultimate research question that you are trying to address, right? So these are the three things which you have to be very careful about. I personally think that in my personal experience, these are the three biases that I mostly see in my discipline. Of course, there are these two biases are also there, especially the first one. I see quite often the first bias as well. And but in general, the first bias, the population choice bias, and these two biases are the most common biases that I see in my domain, in my discipline. Then there is another kind of bias which can happen during the inference kind of stage, where once you observe and then you have to infer, because that's the ultimate goal. You have to infer, you have to conclude something about those findings, the results, and you have to support your original claim. Now, over there also, there can be two types of biases. Okay, I forgot to bold this. The first kind of bias is comparison bias, which is, let's say that you have an approach or research method, you took a research method, and you now want to boast, brag about it by comparing it with other kind of approaches, right? But then when you are doing it, you have to be very careful with whom you're comparing. Because if you're comparing an apple with an orange, that's a bias. And then you're trying to show that apples are a lot better than orange. That's a bias, right? So you have to be very, very careful about the approach that you're trying to compare with, like the baseline approach, or there can be other kind of comparisons also, not just the approach. So you have to be very careful about, like, did the other people do work A on the same research question, B, using the same kind of assumptions that you did, C, using the same kind of data set or population or whatever that is that you did, and D, the control environment probably which you are in, the way you have set up the experiment and the way they have set up the experiments, are they the same? Otherwise, it's not fair to do that comparison. The comparison itself is meaningless, actually, and we don't get anything out of it, out of that comparison, right? So the second category is outcome bias. And by outcome is the final outcome that you are getting, and the final thing that you want to establish. And where the bias can creep in is that when you are, let's say that there are certain outcomes, and what you do is you intentionally or unintentionally give more preference to one kind of outcome. So there can be, let's say, 5 different outcomes, 5 different results, 5 different findings, right? And what you're doing now, you are intentionally or unintentionally focusing more on one kind of outcome and not focusing more on the other kind of outcomes, or giving more preference, highlighting more one kind of outcome as compared to the other kind of outcomes. And it may very well happen that the other outcomes are actually lot more important and lot more important in terms of discussion and debate and further scrutiny as compared to the one that you are trying to highlight. So this is what we call as outcome bias, and this is again something that I sometimes see. I don't see that many number of times, but I do see sometimes. And this comparison bias is also that I see a lot of times actually in my discipline. And finally, this is something that I don't have in my discipline that much, but in certain topics there might be, because there's a government body or your university or whatever that is, and they have a regulatory body, and they kind of like restrict what you can work, even the research question that you can work on and what you cannot work on, the choice of the research question itself. And therefore, because if the research question is controlled, then it's obviously the claims are also going to be controlled. And either and this can be in both. The control is not just restrictive. We need to understand that the controls can be lenient also. Like, let's say that the regulatory body is so lenient that you are essentially, it's letting a researcher to work on something that is absolutely nonsense, or that is not even acceptable in the research community, right? And the body just lets that go, right? So it can be problematic either way. It can be problematic in the restrictive sense. It can also be problematic in the lenient sense, right? So that's a kind of regulation bias that can happen, but that's not some kind of a bias that you have control of. So that's why I've kept it separately. So these are the different biases, and let's see if we have people who have, let's see how many people have faced these biases themselves, or have thought about these biases, that yeah, I might actually be doing one of these biases, or I have seen people doing these biases. I would love to know about your comment on this. So anybody who has encountered such biases. Otherwise, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how you can actually get to learn about all these things while you are actually reading a research paper. And I would use Rax to show you how you can actually do that very easily inside Rax. So what you can do is, for those people who are yet to find Rax, so just go and look up Raxter.io, that's the website. And then you can just log in, and when you log in, so it opens up with your research projects, and your research projects are all the projects that you are currently working on, or you have already worked on. On many of these projects, you might be working solo, many you are working in collaboration with others. And then what happens is that you click on, you can enter any one of the projects, and as Rax is a literature analysis tool, so it all starts from the literature list. And then what you can do is, let's say that I just look into this one paper, so I click on the paper, I enter my reading room, and the moment I enter my reading room, what happens is that on the left-hand side, Rax is trying to dig out all the papers that are related to the main theme of this paper, right? And what I can do, I can read this paper, and I can go and I can look into the experimental section. Let's say I look into this section, data set analysis, right? And what I can do is I can search for more papers related to a specific aspect of that. So I can select this particular section, and then I can click for research articles. So the moment I select a section, what happens is that context menu comes up. Like when I select this section, and let's say that I want to look for more research articles that are related to this particular section only. And this is what section? This is a section in one of the data set analysis part. And I want to know, are there other papers that have kind of used the same data set for the same purpose, how they have used those data sets, what kind of evaluation technique they have used. So then what happens, I have all these papers that have actually used the same kind of data set for the same purpose. And then what I do, I attach them. Okay. And it gets attached to that particular section like a sticky note, right? And I can keep attaching them like this. And then later on, I can come back to this orange zone, and I can see all the papers that I've attached. If I want to read them further, I can add some of them to my literature list, and it gets added to my literature list over here, as you can see, right? And I can read the paper later on, right? So this is a very nice way in which I can quickly figure out what are other papers that are specific to specific sections. Like for this paragraph, I have, I don't think I have anything for this paragraph. Let's say for this paragraph, let's say, no, I don't have anything for this paragraph. So yeah, so that is it. There is another thing that you can do. Let's say that there is a, you know, you are reading, let's say, this section of the experimental design of this paper, and you want to know whether there are other papers in your collection, you know, which are related to this particular section, right? So what you can do is you can select a particular section, and over here you have compare from your collection, right? And you can click on that. And if there is anything, I don't know whether there will be something in my collection. So there isn't anything in my collection, but if there was anything in my collection which is related to this particular section, then that would have come up. As an example, I can give you one example where it actually happened. Let me see, or maybe I can try to see if there I can do another one. Let's say results. Yeah, so as you can see, I got 2 suggestions, all from my collection, across all the projects. One came from this project, and the other came from this project, right? And it tells the people which is inside this project, living inside this project, and it also gives me a section over here, and I can then connect it. And the moment I connect it, and I can say that, okay, this is how they are similar, this is how they are dissimilar, and so on and so forth, right? Or I can make whatever notes I want to make over here, right? So this is one way of doing it. And then I can come back to that thing, and I can actually see that connection over there, right? So this is something which is really, really unique about Rax, and you can very easily kind of relate one paper with the other paper, and it's kind of like a backlink. So I can go to this paper, and that section also gets connected with this. So it's 2 ways, right? And I can see the connection 2 ways. So in some sense, I don't even have to remember which paper is related with which paper and how they are related, which sections are related with this section. So Rax remembers that for me, right? Okay, all right. So that would be kind of like the thing. And what we are going to do is, let me see if I have some sort of a final finishing question. Otherwise, so you can explore Rax, and you can see, you know, and let us know how you will be exploring Rax for you know, designing your experiments, how you will be using Rax for designing your experiments, right? So so that can be. And if you don't have the time to read all the papers, you can go to Key Insights. So this is kind of it kind of some buckets, you know, all this paper and brings all the key insights together, and there is something called research outcome, and you can easily go and look into the how this paper has set up the evaluation, right? And you can just read that section. You know, you don't have to figure out all through the entire paper where something is. So it's all collated nicely for you over here, right? What was the evaluation method, and what was the observation, what was the analysis, and so on, right? Okay, all right. So let me see in YouTube whether there is something that any questions so far. If there isn't any question, or if you want to have, if you have more questions later on, it pops up in your mind, then you can just keep posting it on Discord, and I will be very happy to answer back, because I get immediate notification if you don't know on my mobile. So I get immediate notification of if there is any question. So I'll be very happy to answer those questions. And I will also give you some materials regarding today's discussion, which you can go and you know, you can read them, at your, in your own time. And so I guess I can assume that there is no further question. Would be great for meta-analysis. Yeah. That is the purpose. That is the purpose. So okay. So thanks a lot, and wish you a very, very happy New Year ahead, and stay very, very safe. Do enjoy your New Year, but do stay very safe and take very good care of yourself and very good care of your family, right? And let's meet next Wednesday. And the topic for next Wednesday would be how to conduct experiments, right? So that would be it. So thank you so much for attending. I know it's again it's holiday mood, and thanks so much for staying with me. Bye, 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 everyone.